Support for Mission Nonprofit is provided by Thurston Talk.
This program is provided in the public interest by Thurston Community Media. More information at tcmedia.org.
Combating all forms of human trafficking and supporting all those impacted by this crime is the ongoing work of Innovation's Human Trafficking Collaborative. Stay tuned to learn more about this dynamic organization on this episode of Mission Nonprofit. Welcome to the first Mission Nonprofit of 2025. I'm Deborah Vinsel. Innovation's Human Trafficking Collaborative has been working to eliminate human trafficking since 2016. Joining us today in the studio to talk about their work is the founder, Jerry Muma. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
We're so glad to see you here today. You're an activist and the founder of this organization, so can you tell me a little bit about yourself, share with our audience a little bit about yourself and how the HTC started?
Of course. Like you said, my name is Jerry Muma. I am the founder and I serve as the executive director of Innovation's Human Trafficking Collaborative. And honestly, when I started the organization, I was doing work on a federal level around education on human trafficking. Mm-hmm. And my expertise doesn't come from a book. My expertise comes from being a survivor of trafficking. I was trafficked from the age of 13 till 19, and I was chosen because I was the perfect storm of vulnerability, and I was targeted by who I thought was my knight in shining armor. And my knight in shining armor turned out to be a wolf in sheep's clothing. Mm-hmm. And through systematic, what I call brainwashing, I ended up staying with him for 6 years, and I was a child. And we'll talk a little bit more, about that, but really my why is because I've experienced it. And there is not enough education, there's not enough awareness. And at this point in time, I'd gone back to school. I had, been out of what is referred to, the commercial sex industry mm-hmm. as the life for, about 8 years. And I was traveling around. I'm Native American. I'm an enrolled tribal member of the Shoshone-Bannock tribe, and I was traveling around training at reservations on signs, questions, screening, how to respond, doing all of this. And I'm driving around my own backyard of Olympia, Washington, and I'm looking and seeing what is happening, and nobody is doing anything about it.
Nobody responding.
Nobody.
So was that the catalyst for you to create the organization?
That was. And you know what? I didn't want to do it. I was perfectly fine with just doing consulting. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. Mm-hmm. And it was just tugging at my heart. And I finally was, talking to several of the stakeholders in the area, and they're like, we see it a lot. And I'm like, okay, I'm being called to do this. And I got my 501c3 in 2016. I do come from a nonprofit background, and we opened our doors on May 1st, 2017. We joined the Thurston County Family Justice Center. And there's been a lot that's happened
in a
since
short
then.
period of time. So tell me about
Yes.
the mission of the collaborative.
Our mission is to educate stakeholders, tribes, government organizations, and to support survivors to self-sufficiency through empathy and compassion.
That mission leads to a fairly broad scope of work. So tell me about the work that you do in our community and specific, I mean, what communities you serve. You're an indigenous-led organization.
Yes.
So I know you do have an emphasis to some extent on indigenous populations. But tell us a little bit about the work that you do, the projects that you sponsor, that type of thing.
One of my favorite things to talk about. Well, when we started in 2017, we started with a volunteer of one, which would be myself, and I took all of my consulting money, sunk it into the organization, and was able to hire my first employee in early 2018, and we only had one program at the time, and that was going out, doing training, and educating. And so we were heavy emphasis on that, really hitting, law enforcement, hospitals, school administrators, tribes, and through that, the question was, well, now what do we do? We recognize it. We see it in people that we've either been serving or know about, but who do we call and what do we do? And so as the need and the awareness spread, we started applying for grants. And our first program, besides the training, was direct client service, is supporting those that have been affected by both sex and labor trafficking in identifying their basic needs, helping to meet their basic needs, and work with partners to fill those basic needs. So it started out with just the one program. And yes, we are survivor-led and indigenous-led, but in the beginning, and still in my heart, everybody that has been affected by trafficking needs to be served.
You just used a term that I've not heard before. I think many people who watch this may have a broad concept of what trafficking is, and it all tends to be flavored, well, that's not a good word, colored by sex trafficking, the sex trade. But you just used the term labor trafficking. I've not heard that term before. Can you share with me a little bit more about, I think I understand what it is,
Yes.
but let's be really clear with our viewers what you're talking about when you say labor trafficking.
Labor trafficking is very prominent in our state. And when we're talking about human trafficking, under the federal definition, it's called the MNP model. So there needs to be an action, there needs to be a means, and there needs to be a purpose. So the action could be in any way of forcing somebody to do something against their will. It could be threatening their family, pets, holding a gun to their head, physical beating, anything like that. So that's the action. And then the means is by force, fraud, or coercion. And the outcome would be either sex trafficking or labor trafficking.
And labor trafficking specifically for?
It could be a plethora of different things.
Is another word for that slavery?
Yes, it is slavery.
Okay.
It is. It's working, whether it be agriculture, nail shop, landscaping. I mean, you think of anything where somebody is forced to work
Because they've been coerced
they've
or
been
threatened.
coerced or threatened
Okay.
for little or no pay.
Okay.
And we find that, people think, oh, that doesn't happen around Thurston County. Well, let me tell you, we have ports and we have harbors. And we just worked with Department of Homeland Security less than a year ago to rescue 6 Filipino fishermen that had been labor trafficked on a boat right out here in Grays Harbor. And labor trafficking and sex trafficking go hand in hand. And a lot of people get confused of what actually is trafficking. And they get it confused with human smuggling. Because we'll use the broader term of human trafficking, and that includes both sex and labor. But when you're looking at human smuggling, what human smuggling is, it is a crime against our nation. It is often willing, where somebody is being brought over our border illegally, and that is human smuggling. And there's movement involved. When you look at human trafficking, there does not have to be any movement at all in sex or labor trafficking. What it is, it's a crime against a person where they are being forced, frauded, or coerced either into a commercial sex act or labor.
Labor against their will.
Against their will.
In both cases.
In both cases.
Okay.
But you don't have to move them a single inch. But that doesn't mean that human smuggling doesn't often turn into debt bondage. And then that can turn into sex or labor.
Gotcha.
Yes.
So tell me about the Wraparound Project.
Oh my goodness. We have grown a lot. We have 7 programs now. We've gone from 1 to 7, and we have 2 wraparound programs. One is an Indigenous-led, it's an Indigenous wraparound program, and it is working with anybody who is self-identified as being Indigenous. And what we do is, we do this in both of our wraparound programs. Just one comes from a different pot of grant funding, and the other one, we can serve absolutely anybody over the age of 18. And our wraparound program, initially somebody would come in, they would be screened. Some of the questions that we would ask would be, have you ever been forced to trade sex or labor for anything of value, a place to stay, safety, drugs, alcohol, money, propane, anything of value. And a lot of people don't think of that way. They think of it as only an exchange for money. And, we have such a crisis with our fentanyl crises that more and more people are finding themselves in destitute situations.
And in debt to somebody for
in
something.
Debt, yes.
Yeah.
Even the children of the addicts. Sadly, we see familial trafficking, where people are actually trading their own family members for something of value. And that's not only for drugs. We've seen unscrupulous landlords that took advantage of the COVID money ending. Trafficking can look like so many different forms. Our wraparound program is tailored to each individual. They would come in, they would have a screening, they would be assigned a case manager, they would sit down with the case manager, they would do a danger assessment, they would do safety planning, they would start working on goals and making sure that their basic needs are met. Number one, if somebody doesn't have a place to lay their head that night, or if they found themselves in a situation where they're addicted to drugs and they need to go to treatment, we need to get them someplace safe in the interim until we can get them where they need to go.
So do you have access then to housing resources for folks who are seeking help?
We have had to be very creative about that. And so what we do is we are renting shelter beds in 2 shelters in the area. One in downtown Olympia, we have a room, we only have 2 beds there. And then in Shelton, where they can take pets, we also have a family room that we rent. And it's not cost effective, but in the interim, until, we're doing a capital campaign right now, and we are really hoping that we'll be able to build our own shelter. And in the interim, that's what we're having to do. And we don't have enough beds. And then we don't have enough beds when they're being released from treatment. And so I am happy to say that in September, we rented our first second step transitional house, and it is called the Healing Journey House. And we are working with individuals who have been identified as trafficked that are coming out of Department of Corrections. We connect with them while they're on the inside, and then they're able to go into the house, also working with local tribal treatment centers and people that are in our program that are excelling and are ready. And so we have our first house, and that's part of the wraparound. It is. And so really connecting with them, building that trust.
So tell me about the Mariposa Project. That's another project that we noticed on your website.
The Mariposa Project is my baby. As a survivor leader, I can tell you everything not to do as you progress in your professional career through bumps and bruises, because I had no mentor. And so I partnered with a professor out of the University of Washington, Professor Julie Watts, and we built curriculum around professional development for survivors that want to be involved in advocacy, that want to be involved in legislation, that want to possibly be advocates, maybe want to be a grant writer. I mean, there's so much talent, but people have to believe in you and love you till you're able to love yourself. And so when you really look at it, we have the initial contact, the screening, building trust, advocacy, the shelter beds, getting them to where, their self-determined need is, whether that be going to treatment, getting them into the transitional house, and then they're ready, what I call the rejuvenation, is where you've rejuvenated, you've come out of your cocoon, because mariposa in Spanish means butterfly, and you've came out, and now you're ready to give back. And like I said, I didn't have a mentor, and I don't know everything, but collectively we know a lot. And yeah.
How many staff are there now at the collaborative?
We have 11 on staff, on site, and we have 6 full-time virtual employees.
That's great. And that's really phenomenal growth in a fairly short amount of time, 8 years.
Yes.
8 years, yeah.
Yes.
Wonderful.
We've gone from 1 program to 7, and one of them is Ways Forward. And
Tell us about that.
Ways Forward, I really believe in the public health approach around trafficking. I mean, what we're doing is wonderful and it is needed, but honestly, we're doing triage. It is so much easier to help a child, help a young person, than to heal a broken adult. And so we concentrate on policy and legislation. We are a group of 6 survivors of sex trafficking, and many have been in the movement for decades, and all Washington State residents, and we come together and we work with a lobbyist, of course, under the amount that you can as a nonprofit. And we have combated laws that actually would have made full prostitution legal in the strip clubs. We defeated that part of it. We've introduced bills that got $7.9 million worth of money dropped into the state, some on the west side, equally on the east side. And then we built an advisory committee within that law. And we are able to break silos down because we're bringing those 12 organizations together, sharing policies, transporting people that need safety, and this is phenomenal. And within that bill, it has non-traditional healing as well, which wasn't really accepted before. It was you go to a therapist, or here you can go to a traditional indigenous healer. You could do Reiki. You could do whatever is healing to you.
It works best. Yeah.
Yes, and we have seen such amazing results. But that is 6 survivor leaders coming together, working with our stakeholders, and coming up with what is the upstream approach. Let's get into those schools. Let's educate. Let's get those laws in place where buyers, this is a $225 billion a year criminal enterprise on a global level. And it is fueled by buyers. Yeah. And if we don't go after and hold them accountable, trafficking is going to grow and grow.
So is your work primarily in the South Sound region, or does your organization serve statewide?
We serve Western Washington, and a lot, because we do mobile advocacy, really as far as we will go is King County. But we also provide virtual advocacy, and we have virtual therapy. And one of the things that we just started, because this is hard work, is we've brought on a part-time therapist for staff. Because otherwise the longevity, because many people's whys are exactly what mine is.
They've experienced it.
They've experienced
it. But
it.
then helping somebody else escape or survive that, I would imagine, could re-traumatize folks.
Yeah, and even people that don't have lived experience, you're hearing these stories that are horrific, and you can't take them home and talk to your partner. I mean, you can, but it's
hard,
yeah. And confidentiality. And who do you talk to? And if you bottle that up inside of you, you're not going to last very long in social services.
So we have just a few minutes left, and I know there's so much more we could probably talk about, but I think it's also, we need to get to some very important information, which is, how do folks who are victims reach out to you?
First of all, our website is very informative, and that is www.innovationsinnovationstc.org. And then we also have a hotline that they could call at any time, and that is 833-201-0940. And we are office is confidential, but we are moving to a bigger space because we have
like you're gonna need it.
We have rapidly grown, and we're hoping that within our capital campaign that we will eventually have a full campus to support people, because we have served over 1,000 people in the last 2 years that have walked through our doors requesting
In
support.
Western Washington, 1,000 people.
In Western Washington. Because it is a crime that you're not going to see unless you know what you're looking for.
What could you just really quickly share with us some of the things people might look for that would be a clue that someone is being trafficked?
What you want to look for is oftentimes, if it's a romantic situation, somebody who is 10 years plus older, controlling behavior, speaking for them, they are not holding their own identification. Say somebody is on an airplane and you can see that they're not being allowed to speak for themselves. There could be bruises in multiple different shades of healing. There could be branding, tattoos, similar tattoos, multiple women with one individual that might all have, the same tattoos. It could be frequent visits to the hospital. There's not a one size fit all. Right. It could be everybody who is addicted from fentanyl all the way up from somebody who is living in a gated community. What I call human trafficking is an equal opportunity destroyer. Okay. And learn the red flags. I know we have great information on our website.
So you've mentioned a capital campaign a couple of times, which means I presume that you take donations. You are a 501c3. How can folks support your organization?
We're always looking for volunteers, and we're also looking for board members. So if there's anybody out there with strong financials, definitely.
Indeed, of every nonprofit.
And other positions. We're growing so rapidly that we just need people that want to volunteer and have a strong board that is.
And all of those opportunities are on your website.
Yes.
Innovationshtc.org.
Innovationshtc.org.
Okay. So do you have events or other things coming up throughout the year that you might want to make people aware of?
January is Human Trafficking Awareness Month, and stay tuned on our website. We are planning to do a training and open that up to the public. And also, I know that in February, we have a resource fair coming up where we actually block off the whole city block, and we usually have about 60 providers that come and learn about the resources and social services that are available in the community, and come and learn more about us.
Well, Jerry, I want to thank you for taking time from your busy schedule and for the very hard work that you do, because this is a subject I think not a lot of people know about. They may know it in the broad sense, but not the extent. And to hear that there have been over 1,000 clients served from Western Washington in 2 years certainly puts the problem into perspective for those of us here in Western Washington. So thank you for the work that you do.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I just want to remind everybody watching this that it's not like Pretty Woman, and it's not like the movie Taken. It's not somebody chained to the wall. It is predominantly our own domestic people that come from vulnerabilities, like foster care, broken families, and learn the signs.
Thank you again for joining us and for the very important work that you do. We greatly appreciate it. Nonprofit organizations in our community help care for our neighbors and children. They inform and educate us, enrich our lives with the arts and performances, and help to keep our community safe and healthy. Join us again next month when we introduce you to the important work of another great local organization right here on Mission Nonprofit. I'm Deborah Vinsel, and for all of us here at TC Media, thanks for watching.